She stood on stage accepting the Entrepreneur of the Year award, talking about how she built her best-selling sauce from the ground up. And I was in the crowd, clutching a faded piece of paper in my pocket with our father's handwriting on it, the real recipe she stole while he was dying. The spotlight made the sequins on her dress sparkle, turning her into a symbol of success, a self-made woman. The applause was deafening, but for me it was just white noise, a hollow roar that couldn't drown out the silent scream building in my chest. Every word she spoke was a lie, a carefully crafted performance for an audience that had no idea they were applauding a thief. To understand how I got to that point, how I ended up in a rented tuxedo watching my own sister accept an award for my life story, we have to go back. This whole twisted saga has a beginning, and it's a story I feel compelled to tell. If you want to follow it to the bitter end and see how it all unfolds, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The story started, as all the best ones do, in a warm kitchen filled with the scent of simmering tomatoes and spices. It was my dad's sanctuary, and he made me his apprentice when I was barely tall enough to see over the counter. Our family sauce wasn't just food, it was a legacy. The recipe was a living thing, passed down through generations. My great-grandfather brought it over from the old country, a secret whispered from father to son. It was more valuable than any inheritance of money or property. It was our identity. My dad and I spent countless weekends perfecting it, adjusting a pinch of this, a dash of that. He'd let me stir the big pot, my small hands struggling to move the heavy wooden spoon, while he told me stories of his father and his grandfather, all connected by this one sacred recipe. He taught me that the sauce was about patience, about love, and about family. You don't just taste the ingredients, son, he'd say. You taste the memories. My sister Sarah was never interested. She was always the ambitious one, the one who couldn't wait to leave our small town behind. While I was learning the secrets of the sauce, she was studying for exams, applying to business schools, and dreaming of a corner office in a skyscraper. She saw our family traditions as quaint, something to be embarrassed by. She called the sauce Dad's messy hobby and wrinkled her nose at the smell of garlic that always hung in our house. She loved the results, of course. She'd devour a plate of pasta with the sauce like anyone else. But she had no respect for the process, for the history. For her, it was just ketchup with a backstory. Then Dad got sick. It was slow at first, then all at once. The vibrant man who filled our home with laughter and the smell of cooking grew frail. As he weakened, I took over the sauce making completely, not just as a duty, but as a way to keep his spirit alive in the house. One day, Sarah showed up for one of her rare visits from the city. She saw me in the kitchen surrounded by jars of the sauce I was preparing for friends and local markets, and for the first time, a strange glint appeared in her eyes. It wasn't warmth or nostalgia, it was calculation. She started asking questions, not about Dad's health, but about the sauce. You should really write that recipe down properly, she said, feigning concern. You know, for safekeeping. I was naive. I thought her heart was finally thawing, that she was worried about our family legacy disappearing with Dad. I trusted her. I showed her Dad's old stained notebook, the one with all the notes, the precise measurements, the little secrets scribbled in the margins. She spent an afternoon with it, organizing and digitizing it, she said. She was so helpful, so caring. It was all an act, a brilliant, cold-hearted performance. I didn't find out the truth until 6 months after Dad passed away. I was in a grocery store walking down an aisle when I saw it. A sleek, modern jar with a professionally designed label. It was called Sarah's Gourmet Original. And looking at the jar, I felt a chill run down my spine. The color, the texture I could see through the glass. It was ours. I bought a jar, took it home, and opened it. The smell was unmistakable. It was my father's soul in a jar, packaged and sold by his own daughter. A quick search online revealed the rest of the nightmare. She had filed a patent. The filing date was just 2 weeks after her helpful visit, while our father was in his final days. She hadn't just stolen a recipe, she had stolen our memories, our history, our father's last legacy, and branded it with her own name. The drive to her new, ridiculously lavish office building was a blur. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and the jar of Sarah's Gourmet Original was sitting on the passenger seat, mocking me. It felt like a bomb. I replayed that moment in the grocery store over and over in my head. The slick label, the familiar color of the sauce, the gut-wrenching realization. It was a betrayal so profound, so cold-blooded, that it felt unreal. This wasn't just about a recipe. She had taken the last piece of my father I had left and slapped a price tag on it. I didn't have an appointment. I walked past the minimalist reception desk, the polite but confused looking receptionist, and straight towards the glass walled corner office with her name on it. She was on a conference call, looking powerful in a sharp blazer, nodding and smiling at a screen full of faces. When she saw me, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She held up a finger, a silent command for me to wait, before wrapping up her call with corporate speak that sounded alien coming from my sister's mouth. When she finally let me in, she didn't get up. She gestured to the leather chair opposite her desk. "To what do I owe the surprise visit, little brother?" she asked, her voice smooth and detached, as if I were a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. I didn't sit. I placed the jar on her expensive-looking desk, right next to a family photo of us with our parents, a photo in which she was smiling brightly. The hypocrisy was nauseating. "What is this, Sarah?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She glanced at the jar and then back at me, a flicker of something, annoyance maybe, crossing her face before being replaced by a practiced, condescending calm. "It's my new product line. It's doing exceptionally well, actually. We're projected to hit 7 figures in the first year." She said it with pride, as if she were expecting me to congratulate her. "Your new product line?" I finally found my voice, and it was filled with a bitterness I didn't know I possessed. "This is Dad's sauce. This is our family's recipe, the one you stole from his notebook while he was on his deathbed." The air in the room grew cold. Her calm expression hardened. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, her voice sharp. "I didn't steal anything. I took a basic homemade recipe and I improved it. I perfected it. I invested my own money, my time, and my expertise to turn Dad's messy hobby into a viable, marketable product. Something he could never have done." Every word was a calculated blow. Messy hobby. The phrase echoed in my ears, the same dismissive words she'd used as a teenager. "He poured his life into that sauce," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Our great-grandfather's life. It was our legacy, our story. You had no right." That's when she laughed. It wasn't a happy sound, it was a cold, sharp bark that held no humor. "Right? Let's talk about rights. I have a patent. I have a team of lawyers. What do you have? A sentimental story and a stained notebook? The world of business doesn't run on nostalgia, little brother. It runs on action, on vision. I had the vision. You didn't." I stared at her, trying to see the sister I grew up with, the little girl who I used to build forts with in the living room. But she was gone. In her place was a stranger, a corporate shark with my sister's face. I felt utterly defeated. She was right. What did I have? I couldn't afford to fight her. She had built a fortress of lawyers and patents around our family's heart, and I was on the outside with nothing but a key that no longer fit the lock. I picked up the jar from her desk, the cold glass feeling heavy in my hand. I looked at her one last time. "Dad would be so ashamed of you," I said softly. For the first time, I saw a crack in her composure, a flash of real, raw anger. "Don't you dare," she hissed, standing up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Dad was content to be small. He was afraid of success. I'm honoring his memory by taking his little dream and making it bigger than he ever could have imagined. But we both knew it was a lie. She wasn't honoring him, she was erasing him. I walked out of her office, leaving her standing there amidst her success. The drive home was different. The anger was gone, replaced by a hollow, crushing despair. She had won. She had taken everything, and she had twisted the story so completely that she was now the hero, and I was just the jealous, sentimental fool left behind. The weeks that followed that confrontation were a gray, featureless fog. My small apartment became a cave where I hid from the world. I stopped answering calls, stopped going out. Everywhere I looked, I saw her face. Sarah was on morning talk shows and magazine articles, on billboards. Sarah's gourmet original became a sensation. She was the wunderkind, the brilliant entrepreneur who turned a humble family recipe into a national brand. Her story, the one she stole from me, was being celebrated by millions. Each success she had was like a fresh stab in my gut, a reminder of my own powerlessness. I felt like a ghost in my own life. The kitchen, once my sanctuary, became a place I avoided. The copper pots we used to use, the wooden spoons worn smooth by my father's hand, they were all just painful relics now. The joy was gone, replaced by a suffocating sense of loss. My father's legacy wasn't just stolen, it was being rewritten, and he was being erased from his own story. The despair was a physical weight, pressing down on me until it was hard to breathe. She hadn't just taken a recipe, she had taken my purpose. One rainy afternoon, unable to bear the silence of the apartment any longer, I found myself pulling out a dusty box from the back of my closet. It was filled with my dad's things, old photographs, his favorite flannel shirt, and at the very bottom, his original recipe notebook. Not the one Sarah had digitized, but his personal one filled with decades of notes, spills, and scribbles. My first instinct was to put it away. It felt like holding a hot coal. But something made me open it. The pages were soft and worn, smelling faintly of garlic and dried herbs. His familiar, slightly messy handwriting filled every page. I saw my own childish scribbles in the margins from when I was a boy, drawing little pictures next to his notes. The book wasn't just a collection of instructions, it was a diary of our time together. I could almost hear his voice as I read his words, remembering the exact moments he made those notes. A bit more oregano here. Reminds me of your grandmother's garden. Tried adding smoked paprika. Good, but not our good. I spent hours with that notebook, losing myself in the memories. It was painful, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt a connection to him, a flicker of the warmth I thought was gone forever. And then I found it. It was on a page near the end, a page dedicated to the final, most crucial step of the process. Most of the recipe was clean and precise, but this one ingredient had a messy, circled note next to it. The ingredient was a specific type of smoked chili pepper, one that was hard to find. Next to it, Dad had written, "The secret isn't the heat, it's the bitterness. Most people would try to balance it, make it smoother. But this slightly imperfect bitter note is the heart of it. It's the taste of home." And underneath that, in handwriting that was shakier, likely from his last few years, he had added something else. "Sarah will probably want to fix this, but you and I, we know the truth. This is our signature." I stared at the words until they blurred. Sarah will probably want to fix this. He had known. He had known her ambition, her desire to perfect and polish everything, to smooth out the very edges that gave things character. I flipped through my memory to the confrontation in her office. "I took a basic homemade recipe and I improved it. I perfected it," she had said. She hadn't just stolen the recipe, she had changed it. She had removed the one thing my father believed was its soul. She had erased his signature. In that moment, the fog of despair began to lift, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't just a sentimental note. It was a roadmap. It was a weapon. She had built her empire on a lie, and in her arrogance, she had discarded the one detail that could expose it all. A plan began to form in my mind, a quiet and patient strategy. I wasn't going to sue her. I wasn't going to scream and yell. I was going to do what my father taught me to do best. I was going to cook. And I was going to remind the world what our family's sauce was really supposed to taste like. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a son with a mission. The plan was simple, almost poetic in its justice. I wouldn't expose her with lawyers or angry accusations. I would expose her with the truth, one jar of sauce at a time. The first step was to bring our real family recipe back to life. I cleaned my kitchen until it gleamed, pulling out the old copper pot, feeling its familiar weight in my hands. It no longer felt like a painful relic. It felt like armor. I spent the next week sourcing the ingredients, not from a generic supplier, but from local farms, the way my dad used to. I found the ripest tomatoes, the most fragrant basil, the freshest garlic. The final crucial ingredient was the special smoked chili pepper, the one with the imperfect bitter note. It took me 3 days of searching, but I finally found a small specialty shop that imported them. Holding the small wrinkled pepper in my hand, I felt like I was holding the key to everything. The first batch I made was a ceremony. I followed my dad's notes to the letter, the motions coming back to me as if I had never stopped. The smell that filled my small apartment wasn't just the aroma of cooking, it was the scent of my childhood, of my father's presence. As I added the smoked chili, I could almost hear him whispering, "Remember, son, it's not a flaw. It's our signature." When it was finally done, I let the sauce cool and took the first spoonful. The taste was overwhelming. It was rich, complex, and then at the very end, there it was. That subtle, beautiful bitterness. It was the taste of home. It was perfect in its imperfection. Now I had the sauce, but I needed a name. Sarah's Gourmet Original was slick and corporate. I wanted something with heart. I looked at the old notebook, at my father's name written on the inside cover. The answer was obvious. I would call it Dad's Legacy. It was simple, honest, and it was the truth. I designed the label myself, using a font that looked like his handwriting and a simple hand-drawn picture of a tomato vine. It looked nothing like my sister's product. Hers was designed to be sold. Mine was designed to be shared. My business launch was a folding table at a local farmer's market. I had a couple dozen jars, a small sign, and a bowl of pasta for people to try samples. I felt small and insignificant, especially knowing Sarah's products were in thousands of stores nationwide. The first few hours were slow. People would walk by, glance at my humble setup, and move on to more professional-looking stalls. A familiar wave of doubt washed over me. Was this a mistake? Was Sarah right? Did the world only care about slick marketing and polished perfection? Then an older woman stopped at my table. She looked at the jar, then at me. "Dad's Legacy," she read aloud, a soft smile on her face. My dad used to make a sauce, too. I offered her a sample. She took a small bite and her eyes widened slightly. She took another, this time more slowly. A strange, thoughtful expression crossed her face. "That's funny," she said, her voice quiet. "This tastes familiar. It tastes like something I haven't had in a very long time. It's got a little kick at the end, not heat, something else." My heart pounded in my chest. "Bitterness?" I asked. "Yes, that's it," she exclaimed. My dad's had something similar. Everyone else tries to make their sauce so sweet. This one has character. She bought 2 jars. Then, a man who tried it said it reminded him of the sauce his grandmother made. Another person bought 3 jars after one taste. By the end of the day, I had sold every single jar. I hadn't made a fortune, but I had made a connection. People didn't just taste the sauce, they tasted the story in it. They recognized the authenticity, the very flaw that my sister had so arrogantly erased. Driving home, I knew this was just the beginning. I had the better story, and now I knew I had the better sauce. That first day at the farmer's market wasn't a fluke. It was the beginning of a quiet revolution fought with tomatoes and basil. Every Saturday, I was at my stall, and every Saturday, my customer base grew. It started with the same faces returning each week, holding out their empty jars for a refill. They'd bring their friends, telling them, "You have to try this. It's not like that stuff in the supermarket." The name Dad's Legacy started to create a small but loyal following. My operation was still tiny. I spent my weekdays cooking in my small apartment kitchen, the scent of garlic and herbs permanently clinging to my clothes. I bottled and labeled everything by hand. It was exhausting work, but it was honest, and it was mine. A local food blogger with a decent following wrote a small piece about me. She called my sauce a taste of authentic, unapologetic nostalgia and praised the brave, bitter finish that sets it apart from its commercial counterparts. That article brought a new wave of customers. Soon, a few local cafes and delicatessens asked to stock my sauce on their shelves. I was still a minnow in an ocean dominated by my sister's corporate shark, but I was swimming, and I was growing stronger. I never mentioned Sarah. When people asked about the story behind the sauce, I told them about my dad, about our family's history, about the importance of keeping his memory alive. The story was the truth, and its power was in its sincerity. I didn't need to tear her down. My sauce was building its own reputation on taste and heart alone. I tried to ignore her success, the new magazine covers, the announcements of her expansion into international markets. It was a different world, one of cold, hard numbers. My world was one of handshakes, of knowing my customers by name, of the quiet satisfaction of seeing someone's eyes light up when they tasted something real. The inevitable finally happened one afternoon. I was making a delivery to a small Italian deli when the owner, a friendly man named Marco, called me over to the counter. He had a gossip magazine open, and on the glossy page was a picture of Sarah smiling at some charity gala. "Hey, isn't this your sister?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. "Her sauce is okay, you know? A little boring. My wife bought a jar once. She said yours tastes like it was made by a person, and hers tastes like it was made by a committee." I just nodded, a tight feeling in my chest. "Yeah, that's her," I managed to say. It was the first time someone had made the connection and judged my sauce to be superior. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. What I didn't know was that my small victories were starting to create ripples. A friend of mine sent me a screenshot a week later. It was from a live Q&A session Sarah had done on social media. A user had asked, "Have you tried Dad's Legacy sauce? There are rumors it's connected to your family." I watched the clip. Sarah's practiced smile didn't waver. She laughed lightly and said, "It's wonderful that my success has inspired so many home cooks to follow their passions. Authenticity is all about innovation, and that's what we're focused on." She never mentioned my name. She dismissed me as just another inspired home cook. But later that night, my friend sent me another screenshot. This one was from the private account of one of Sarah's top executives, a woman I'd seen in photos with her. The post was public. It was a picture of my humble jar of Dad's Legacy with a condescending caption. Cute. It's always flattering when people try to copy you, but there's only one original. The war hadn't started with a cannon blast. It had started with a quiet, condescending whisper on the internet. They had noticed me, and they were getting ready to fight back. The condescending social media post was just the first shot. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just petty jealousy from a corporate drone. My business was growing slowly but surely. I had moved out of my apartment kitchen and into a small rented commercial space. I was still doing everything myself, the cooking, the bottling, the deliveries, but now I could produce more. The name Dad's Legacy was becoming synonymous with quality and authenticity in our local food scene. More stores were carrying it, and I was even in talks with a regional distributor. For the first time, I felt a genuine sense of hope that my small tribute to my father could actually become a sustainable life for me. That hope was shattered on a Tuesday morning. A courier delivered a thick, crisp envelope to my new kitchen. It had the name of a high-powered corporate law firm embossed in the corner. My hands trembled slightly as I tore it open. Inside was a 10-page document filled with dense, intimidating legal jargon. It was a cease and desist letter. The letter was from Sarah's company. It accused me of trademark infringement, unfair competition, and attempting to deliberately mislead consumers by using a branding and narrative confusingly similar to their own. It claimed that the name Dad's Legacy was an intentional effort to trade on the goodwill and market recognition of Sarah's Gourmet Original. It was absurd. She had stolen our father's legacy, and now she was accusing me of infringing on her brand by honoring him. The words blurred as I read on. The letter demanded that I immediately stop selling any product under the name Dad's Legacy, destroy all existing labels and marketing materials, and transfer ownership of my website domain to her company. But the most audacious demand came at the end. It insisted I sign a statement acknowledging that Sarah's Gourmet Original was the sole authentic recipe, and that any similarities in my product were coincidental and subordinate. They weren't just trying to shut me down, they were trying to legally erase the truth and force me to be a co-signer on their lie. A cold rage unlike anything I had felt before washed over me. This was so much worse than the theft of the recipe. This was a calculated, soulless attempt to use the weight of corporate power to crush me. She couldn't beat my sauce on taste or authenticity, so she was sending her lawyers to do her dirty work. She was trying to bully me into submission, banking on the fact that I was just one person with limited resources, and she was a multimillionaire with an army of attorneys. I sat there in my kitchen, the smell of simmering tomatoes hanging in the air, and I stared at the letter. For a moment, fear crept in. They could ruin me. They could drag me into a legal battle that would drain every cent I had and destroy everything I had built. The thought of giving up, of just walking away from it all, flickered in my mind. It would be the easy thing to do. But then my eyes fell on the old, worn recipe book my dad had left me, which I now kept on a shelf in the kitchen. I saw his handwriting, his notes, his passion. I thought about what he would have done. He never backed down from a bully. He believed in standing up for what was right, no matter how hard it was. This wasn't just about a sauce anymore. It was about my father's name. It was about my name. It was about the truth. I picked up the letter, walked over to the stove, and turned on a burner. I held the corner of the thick paper over the blue flame. It curled, turned black, and then burst into a small, bright fire. I watched it burn until nothing was left but a pile of gray ash in my sink. They had made a critical mistake. They thought their letter would scare me. Instead, it had just lit a fire under me. The war was no longer quiet, and I was not going to back down. The lawyer's letter was a declaration of war, but I was wrong about the battlefield. I expected a drawn-out, expensive court case. Amelia, however, knew that a legal battle could lead to discovery, where she'd have to produce evidence of her development process, evidence that didn't exist. So she chose a different weapon: public opinion. She decided to put me on trial in the court of social media, and she was the judge, jury, and executioner. It started subtly. A sponsored post from a mid-tier food blogger questioning the sudden emergence of a sauce so similar to Amelia's Gourmet. Then another from a different influencer hinting that a disgruntled family member was trying to cash in on her success. Within a week, it became a full-blown media assault. Amelia used her millions to orchestrate a smear campaign that was as brutal as it was effective. My face was plastered across online gossip magazines under headlines like The Copycat Brother and Betrayal in the Family Business. She gave an exclusive interview to a major online publication, crying crocodile tears as she described her heartbreak. She painted a picture of a lazy, unambitious brother who had never supported her, who suddenly appeared out of the woodwork to steal her hard-earned glory. She claimed she had spent years developing the recipe, while I had done nothing but watch from the sidelines, green with envy. The lies were so audacious, so completely detached from reality, that I felt like I was losing my mind. Every notification on my phone was a new wave of hatred. Strangers flooded my business's social media pages calling me a thief, a parasite, a disgrace. My 5-star reviews were drowned out by 1-star ratings from people who had never even tasted my sauce. They weren't just attacking my business, they were attacking my character, my relationship with my father, my very identity. It was a digital mob, and Amelia was conducting it like a symphony orchestra. The most painful part was how she twisted the truth about our father. In her narrative, she was the devoted daughter who had taken his humble kitchen experiments and turned them into a legacy. I was the ungrateful son who was trying to tarnish his memory for a quick buck. She was stealing not just the recipe, but my entire history with him. I felt helpless, watching her rewrite our family story for the whole world to see. My small, honest business was no match for her corporate PR machine. I was losing. The truth didn't seem to matter when the lie was so much more sensational. I knew then that I couldn't fight her on her terms. A legal battle or a public statement would just be my word against hers, and she had a much bigger microphone. I had to find a way to make her defeat herself. The media storm Amelia had created was a double-edged sword. While her accusations stung, they also brought an unprecedented amount of attention to Dad's legacy. People were curious. They wanted to know who this copycat was. And when they tried my sauce, they discovered the truth for themselves. My sales tripled in a week, but I knew this wave of public sympathy wouldn't last. I needed a permanent solution, a checkmate move that would end her game for good. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. An email notification popped up on my screen. Amelia Maxwell, CEO of Amelia's Gourmet, to appear on Tastemakers Live next Friday. It was one of the biggest live food shows in the country. This was it. This was the stage I needed. I knew I couldn't expose her on my own. I needed an ally, someone respected and trusted in the food world. The answer was a popular food blogger who went by the name Sauce Savvy. He was known for his brutal honesty and his love for authentic, small-batch products. A month ago, he had posted a glowing review of Dad's Legacy, calling it a masterpiece of nostalgia and flavor. He was the key. I spent an entire night drafting an email to him. I didn't just ask for help. I laid my soul bare. I told him the entire story from my father's deathbed to Amelia's threats. I attached a photo of my father's handwritten recipe, carefully blurring out everything except his signature and the date. I wasn't asking him to believe me blindly. I was asking him to see the truth. For 2 days, there was silence. I started to lose hope. Then a reply. Your story is insane. If it's true, it's one of the biggest scandals in the industry. I need more. We set up a video call. I showed him more of my father's notes, his journals, and photos of us in the kitchen as kids. I didn't have a patent or a legal document, but I had a lifetime of proof. Sauce Savvy listened intently, his expression shifting from skepticism to outrage. She built an empire on a lie, he said, his voice low and angry. People like her give real entrepreneurs a bad name. He was in. Together, we hatched a plan. It was simple, elegant, and preyed on Amelia's single greatest weakness, her arrogance. Sauce Savvy would use his influence to get a live call-in slot during her interview on Tastemakers Live. He would start by praising her, fluffing her ego. Then he would ask about the sauce's unique flavor profile, but he would mention a completely fake secret ingredient. He'd talk about a hint of smoky paprika that he thought he detected. The theory was simple. Amelia's pride would not allow someone else to incorrectly identify a key component of her masterpiece. She would feel an overwhelming urge to correct him, to show off her superior knowledge. And in her rush to prove him wrong, we hoped she would reveal the real secret imperfect note, the bitter almond. It was a long shot, a psychological gamble, but it was the only trap she wouldn't see coming. The stage was set. The bait was ready. All we had to do was wait for the queen to walk into her own checkmate. The day of the live interview arrived. I was in my small office watching on my laptop, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drum. Amelia walked onto the set of Tastemakers Live, looking every bit the part of the untouchable CEO. She was confident, charming, and radiated success. She talked about her journey, her passion, and the countless hours she spent perfecting her sauce. Every word was a perfectly polished lie, and the host, a charismatic man named Mark, was eating it up. My stomach churned with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Everything hinged on the next few minutes. About halfway through the interview, Mark turned to the camera. Amelia, we have a surprise for you. We've got a live call from one of your biggest fans, the one and only Sauce Savvy. My eyes widened. It was him, the food blogger. He had agreed to help. His voice, familiar from his videos, boomed through the studio speakers. Amelia, huge fan. Your sauce is a masterpiece, but I have to ask about one thing that drives me crazy, in a good way. It's that subtle, smoky paprika aftertaste. It's almost imperfect, but it makes the sauce unforgettable. Was that a happy accident? Or a secret touch from your original family recipe? I held my breath. This was it. The bait. Smoky paprika was nowhere near our father's recipe? It was a complete fabrication designed to trigger her arrogance. I watched Amelia's face on the screen. A flicker of confusion crossed her features, quickly replaced by a condescending smile. She laughed, a sound that was meant to be charming, but came across as dismissive. Oh, Sauce Savvy, thank you for the kind words, but you're mistaken, she said, shaking her head. Smoky paprika? Heavens, no. That would completely overpower the delicate balance. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with the self-importance of an expert correcting a novice. The real secret, the little imperfection that my father and I obsessed over, it was a hint of slightly over-roasted bitter almond. Just a touch. It gave the sauce a depth that no one could ever replicate. The moment the words left her mouth, I knew I had her. On the screen behind her, which had been showing promotional shots of her products, the image suddenly switched. It was a screenshot of the email I had sent to Sauce Savvy the week before. My words were highlighted in bright yellow. She will deny the paprika. Her ego won't let her accept a flaw that isn't hers. She will correct you by revealing the real imperfect note, the bitter almond. This is the proof. Amelia's smile froze. Her eyes darted to the screen behind her, and the color drained from her face. The host, Mark, stared at the screen, then at Amelia, his jaw slack. A hush fell over the entire studio. She had not only admitted to knowing the secret ingredient from our father's original recipe, but she had done it with such arrogance, so desperate to prove her ownership, that she had walked right into the trap. She had just confessed to the entire world that she was a liar and a thief. The silence in the studio was deafening, broken only by Amelia's frantic, shallow breaths. The host, Mark, looked from the screen to her, his face a mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes held a glint of shock. The clip ended, and the camera zoomed back in on my sister's face. The confident, arrogant CEO was gone. In her place was a cornered animal, her mask of success shattered into a million pieces. She stammered, trying to form words, but nothing came out. The imperfect note, the one detail only a person who truly knew the original recipe could have identified, had been her undoing. The trap hadn't just caught her, it had made her confess to the world without her even realizing it. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for her. Sauce Queen's stolen empire became the #1 trending topic online. The interview clip went viral, dissected and analyzed by thousands. Bloggers, food critics, and news outlets who had once praised her as a genius now labeled her a fraud. Her carefully constructed empire, built on a foundation of lies, crumbled almost overnight. Major retailers pulled Amelia's Gourmet from their shelves. Her investors sued her, and the company filed for bankruptcy within a month. She lost everything: the money, the fame, the company she had built on our father's grave. Last I heard, she was living a quiet, secluded life. The public shame too much to bear. I never heard from her again. As for me, Dad's legacy became more than just a business. It became a symbol of truth and authenticity. Our sales skyrocketed. People weren't just buying a sauce, they were buying a story of justice, of a son honoring his father. I used the profits to expand, just as I'd planned. I hired a small, dedicated team and we moved from my garage to a proper facility. I never changed the recipe, not even that one imperfect, love-filled note. It was the heart of our brand, the secret ingredient that wasn't just about flavor, but about memory and love. Life is good now. I have a thriving business that I'm proud of, one built on honesty and hard work. I'm not a multimillionaire living in a mansion, but I have enough. More importantly, I have peace. I've honored my father's memory, not by seeking revenge in a courtroom, but by ensuring his true legacy lived on. Every bottle of sauce we ship out feels like a victory, a testament to the quiet, brilliant man who taught me everything. His memory is no longer a source of pain, but a source of pride and inspiration. I finally feel like I've made him proud, and that brings my story to a close. I took a path of quiet, calculated justice instead of loud, public confrontation. So I have to ask you, did I do the right thing? What would you have done in my place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of betrayal and sweet revenge, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.